Hello, welcome to OPA GCSE Sociology. This is lesson 16. What is the difference between a consensus and a conflict approach? So very similar to some of your do-nows leading up to the half-term assessment that we done. Obviously, you're not going to do this in pairs. You're just going to do this on your own. Bit of recall here as well. Just identify some of those key concepts associated with each one of the theories. Okay, functionalism, Marxism, interactionism, new right, and feminism, or alternatively, just write a brief statement about what each one of those talk about. Okay, so you're going to just pause the video for 5 minutes and do exactly that, preferably without looking through any prior notes. Off you go. Okay, right, so I've just added on really some key concepts associated with each one. I'm not going to go through them in a massive amount of detail, maybe just one or two of them, because they're throughout on all the previous OPA lessons. So you can do that yourself. Okay, so just three to four from each one. So you've got the organic analogy, that's Durkheim's idea of structures almost being like this body analogy, working together, and the value consensus, that's just this idea of where society shares values, and social cohesions where everything is good in society. And the Marxist ones, class inequality, so different life chances and experiences based on your class. Capitalist superstructures, so inequality reinforced through these structures. Ruling class ideology is the idea that exploitation is covered up. So we don't really know the wages and how much effort people who earn more than us are actually putting in. False consciousness, the idea that meritocracy works. And then for feminism, you've got patriarchy, so male-dominated society. You've got equity and equality there, so just the idea, equality, that you try to achieve fairness through equal share or equal in everything, and equity is trying to tailor for that. You know, we've got new rights, so cultural poverty, that's a Lewis concept, the idea that people in poverty through their culture, through their, their attitudes, beliefs, actions, not through economics. Underclass, so that's this class below the working class who are welfare dependent, i.e. don't have a job, just claim benefits, and dysfunctional families. So in their eyes, anything that's not the traditional nuclear family is seen as dysfunctional. And then finally, the interactionism, so the self-concept, this idea of how you view yourself and that projects onto others in social interaction. And social interaction itself is just how you act with others. Labeling process, so that's you achieving this label. And the real extreme of that is self-fulfilling prophecy, this idea that you live up to the label. So I've gone through that very quickly, but I want to move on to the main part of the lesson, really. So like I said, there's plenty of other recall lessons for you to go on and look at those key theories. Right, so obviously you haven't got these sheets, but what I did ask is for students to glue them in and then annotate them as we go along. So you can just do something very similar. You can pause it here, write down the key information, and then annotate or highlight any key bits as you see fit. So what we're going to do first is we're going to outline this. There's two real different sociological approaches. There's a structuralist approach and there's a social action approach. So the structuralist approach rather, so this is the belief that society and individuals' beliefs and actions are predominantly influenced by structures. So hence in the name really, structuralist, structure. So they believe that structures dictate people's actions, ideas, and beliefs. So structures such as the family, education, the workplace, media, peers, crime, health, etc. There's many. And this is a macro approach to sociology. So this really looks at the big picture. The influence comes from the top of society through structures to influence the individual. You've got various theories that, in fact, most theories that we look at that follow this approach. You've got the functionalists, the Marxists, feminists, new right. And they may not agree with each other, but they are all structuralists. And then on the flip side of that, you get the social action approach. So this is the belief that society and individuals' beliefs and actions are predominantly influenced during the social interaction on an individual level. So this is a micro approach to sociology, and it believes that the influence in society comes from the individual during that interaction. And it builds up. So it's almost like a domino effect. It starts with interaction between individuals and then perhaps groups. And those groups mobilize almost like a grassroots movement into structures. And then that structure influences society. So it's the opposite of what the structuralist thinks. Instead of being a top-down approach, this is a bottom-up approach. And there's only really one theory that follows this social action approach that we'll be looking at anytime soon, and that's the interactionists. Right, so concentrating on that first bit, really, the structuralists. There's two real approaches to this. So everyone on this page agrees with the idea of structure. They think that structure influences the individual in their beliefs and their attitudes and their actions. But I don't necessarily have to think that structure is a good thing. So with the consensus approach now, consensus structuralists see these structures as good things. So you've got, for example, the functionalists, they state through the organic analogy that structure works together and it leads to social cohesion and a value consensus, so that all these structures work together for the benefit of society and civilization. And another consensus approach, like I said in the past, they're more like an extreme version of functionalism. That's the new right. Now, they concentrate specifically on when things go bad and the family. And they say that things are great and positive when traditional values and traditional family types are maintained. But if not, things go bad. Okay, and they talk about the underclass. And then on the flip side of that, we have the conflict approach. So hence the name. So you've got consensus on one side. If you're in consensus, it means generally everyone's agreeing, whereas conflict obviously means some sort of challenge or friction. So the conflict structuralists believe that structure is in society, so they agree with the consensus approach there. They are structuralists, but they believe that these structures are overall bad for society and they reinforce struggles and inequalities. So there's two main ones we look at. There's the Marxists. So the Marxists think structures reinforcing class inequality and your class position. And then, like the Marxists, the feminists state that these structures are reinforcing inequality, but they concentrate on gender inequality. And they say that's reinforced through patriarchal structures, so gender, male-dominated structures. So just really clear here, structures, there's two different types, a consensus and a conflict approach. So got them here. It's just really what we were discussing previously, and I'm just going to leave them on here just for you to digest again. You've got the consensus approaches here through the functionalists and the organic analogy, and the new right through the underclass on one side. And as you're really digesting this, I think really what you should do is, with each one of these theories, just have one concept really to support where they stand on structure. So do they think it's a good thing or bad thing? So for the functionalists, you say, oh, they think it's a good thing and refer to the organic analogy. For the new right, say, oh, they think it's a good thing as well and refer to the underclass. When things go bad, when these structures aren't working together, it leads to an underclass. And exactly the same for the conflict approaches. So you're going to say, you know, these structures are not good for society. They reinforce certain things. And you can do that for the Marxists through the capitalist superstructures. And for feminists, we haven't really gone into a lot of detail, but you could use for the family canalization. So that's reinforcing traditional masculine and feminine gender roles that reinforce gender inequality. Right, so the next task, we're actually going to move on and look at answering a 12 marker. So we've got this 12 marker here, discuss how far sociologists agree social structures have a negative impact on society. So we're not going to spend a massive amount of time on this because this is really something you needed to be there to do. So I'm going to try and do my best to go through each bit and trying to break it down. And we're not going to have a massive amount of time. And I would encourage you to go to the before or after school revision sessions to try and really see modeling one-on-one, or for me to mark it one-on-one. But we're going to follow this template, and I'm just going to go through what you should really do. Before we do, this was actually a question that came up in the half-term mock, and many of you guys got that level 2. Now, it wasn't because you necessarily didn't know each theory, some of you didn't, but it was really to do with timing. That's roughly a mark per minute. So you really talk about, to give you a bit of change with that. So you've got 15 minutes for that question. And it's asking really for you to have a paragraph that supports that in paragraph 1, so that supports that statement, one that goes against it, and then a conclusion. Now, looking at the mark schemes, I'm not going to go into massive detail about this because there will be a separate playlist going over how to answer 12 marker, but you should see it like a lift with a key. So for each level, there are five, that makes no sense. There are 3 criteria for each level that you need to pass: AO1, AO2, and AO3. Okay, and once you've done that, you can move on to the next level. So what we was finding was in level 2, the majority of you were providing evidence of relevant knowledge. So you're showing a bit of theory. You're able to apply it. And you were doing that in paragraph 1, maybe getting on to paragraph 2, but many of you were missing out on that conclusion. So you may have been on track to answer a really brilliant essay, but you didn't get there because you ran out of time and you ran out of steam. So you didn't write a good conclusion or a conclusion at all. And it limits you really to those 6 marks. So the template I'm going to be going over is actually that of a level 3 of sort of 7 to 9 marks. I want to get everyone on board there first. After all, the 12 markers make up 48% of the assessment. So it's a really key one to have a strong foundation in. And it's really hopefully going to be an answer that's good evidence, that's relevant, it's applied well, and you've made good analysis and evaluation on that. So it's really ensuring that you have those 3 paragraphs, the point for, the point against, and the conclusion. So let's just go through the question. So the secondary concept there is discussing. Now, what that means is it's just really you outlining what the debate is within social theory amongst sociologists. And the key part there, the content is asking is negative impact on society. So it's talking about structure and negative impact on society. So we've just gone over that, and it's the conflict theorists who are talking about the negative impact on society. So you would choose either the Marxist or feminist for paragraph 1. And then you'd counter that by talking about the consensus structuralists by saying, oh no, structure is a good thing. So in paragraph 2, you'd either talk about functionalists or new right, and then you'd come up with your own conclusion. So I've really just gone through what you'd insert in each one of those bits. So you might go, some sociologists, such as Marxists, I can't really see the whole thing typical. So I'm just going to do it on here. So some sociologists, such as Marxists, agree that, and then you refer back to the question, that social structure has a negative impact on society. One argument to support this view is, and you can see you've got to insert there, capitalist superstructure. So that'd be a really good clear point there, because you're making the point about capitalist superstructures, but you're addressing that question. Okay, you're showing the examiner you know what you're talking about. You're paraphrasing it, that's fine. And then in your evidence, really, you're going to be given a definition of what a capitalist superstructure is and giving an example there. So you've got theory, evaluation, or evidence rather, and concepts. That's what you need in the middle there. That's what's going to get you those AO2 and AO1 marks. Okay, so you might give the example of structures like, and I've used it, education here. So you might refer to it being unfair because it's a privately educated people end up with better life chances, higher up in terms of class, things like that. Now, if you want a level 4, if you're aiming for that, that 10 to 12, you really need to show a little bit more knowledge. So you might refer to something like another Marxist concept like false consciousness or ruling class ideology, if it fits. Don't force it though. And time as well. It's better that you come back to this if needs be. You ensure you've got that conclusion. So after you've done that, so after you've given a little definition and given an example, you're then going to go on to summarize it up. So therefore, this shows us that Marxists see structure as having a negative impact because of capitalist superstructures. So again, you're referring back to the question, you're coming full circle. And then you refer to your second paragraph. So however, this is criticized by functionalists. So what are they criticizing? So you're going to address the question again. So this is criticized by functionalists, other sociologists, and then you might say such as Durkheim or Parsons argue that, and then again addressing the question, structure has a positive impact on society. It can be explained by the counter view of, and then the organic analogy. And remember, theory, evidence, and concepts there. So you're going to give it a description, a definition, what an organic analogy is, and then maybe give an example of how one of those structures reinforces this, this sort of positivity and this good stuff in society. And then for level 4, you might go into saying furthermore, and then talk about social cohesion, value consensus. And then again, you're coming full circle here. Therefore, this challenges the view that, and you're addressing the question again, structures are negative, have a negative impact on society because of, and then organic analogy. And then for the last bit, it's your conclusion now. So in conclusion, we can see that sociologists are divided as to address the question. So whether structures have a negative impact on society. And then on consideration of the evidence, the most convincing argument is, and then you're going to say which one you think is the most convincing and why. And as you're going through this, you need to say why, explain that, maybe explain why the other theory is wrong. So think of a critique of it. And maybe give an example of that, and why your one is better. Simple as that, really. You can draw on wider examples in society, so things like COVID or recessions. You've got the template there for you to go through. So simply, what I recommend you do is simply answer that question. And bring it into class, so I can then mark it and tell you what you've done right, what you've done wrong. And then we can either go through it again to either get you that level 3, to show you what you're missing out, or maybe if you've mastered that, move on to see how we can get you up to that level 4. Okay, so the next lesson will be going through what the difference is between quantitative and qualitative analysis.